This is our 525C Caterpillar skidder, and we're going to do a walk around this morning. I'm going to let one of my former students, Haywood Johnson, carry you through that. And if you will, just pay attention to what he's learned in this class, and he's going to walk us through a daily walk around and include a few things that we'll do once a week. Now, I'd like to bring Haywood up right now. Haywood Johnson, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Megan. Prior to operating the Caterpillar 525C on a daily basis every morning, as I approach this equipment, I want to scan the grounds beneath it to make sure that there are no leaks, fluids, water, and stuff like that. And since I'm on this side, I might as well look on the inside of this tire here to make sure that there are no brake fluid or any fluids rolling down on the tire or no wet spots. And then as I approach the equipment, I want to look at this pin here. This is a cylinder pin, and of course a pin that holds this here blade in place. We want to make sure that it's not loose and whatnot, and that it's good and tight. And being that I'm on this side and I do have view of this battery, I want to check inside for debris, make sure that the cables aren't frayed, and make sure that everything is all right. And of course, we want to check inside of this compartment here normally, check for frayed hoses to make sure that the jumping cables inside is all right, the alternator, the generator, and all of the belts are in place and they're not frayed and whatnot or worn. And then we want to make sure we put this door back on in place each time we take it off to make sure that everything is secured. And while I'm on this side, I want to check the inside of this tire to make sure that there are no leaks and whatnot, and those back pins in this cylinder are secured. And of course, I want to check the outside of this tire and around the rim to make sure that there are no wood between the tire and the rim. Make sure that, okay, another thing we want to check in our walk around are the tires. We do the same checkpoints for all 4 tires. We want to check the lug nuts to make sure that they're tight, make sure that there's no metal shavings around. That's a sign of wear and tear. We want to check the valve cover cap to make sure it's tight, and around the rim and the edge of the tire to make sure that there's no wood in between the tire and the rim. And we do that for all 4 tires, of course. And then as I come around, I want to check for more debris that's up on the machine, because it could be a hazard. Debris on these steps could cause you to slip and get hurt. And on the inside of the cab on this side, I want to check to make sure that there's no loose objects rolling around on the floor, because it could cause an accident or something. If you've got bottles and things like that loose on the floor rolling around, it could get your accelerator stuck, or it could cause your brakes to get stuck, and you may need to use those brakes at that time, okay? And then of course we want to check this center part here, which is called the articulation. And of course we want to check it for debris. We want to check in here for frayed hoses and loose hoses, hydraulic hoses. We want to make sure that they're all intact and in good shape. We want to check here for debris to make sure that it's clean out, because it could cause us a problem. We want to check the locking bar to make sure it's in place and that it's loose and there's no loose bolts and nuts and whatnot. And of course we want to look up this here, this grapple boom dual function here, because this here takes so much wear and tear during the day, you know, lifting logs, pulling logs, and we want to make sure that all of the pins on this here grapple boom dual function is in place and they're all tight and not loose. I want to check my gas cap here, my lock, to make sure that that's intact in all my bolts. And of course we check our winch oil. I'm gonna say our oil for our winch right here, and it appears to be in pretty good shape. And of course I want to scan right on up this here grapple boom dual function to make sure that all of the bolts are tight and in place and everything. I want to check my butt plate to make sure it's not cracked. And these are little small fair lead rollers here. We want to make sure that they're intact and whatnot, and that the pins are in there, because this section here takes so much beating throughout the day with the butts of the log. Then I want to check my grapple. I want to make sure that there are no cracks along the base here. I want to make sure that all of the pins are in place. I want to make sure the cylinders aren't leaking fluid, aren't busted and whatnot. And then I want to look at my grapple snobber to make sure that it's intact and it's not out of place, and that in it. Now I want to come around on this side of the grapple, then make my checks to make sure that there are no cracks or no loose pins and bolts and whatnot. I want to make sure that there are no leaks in the cylinders and whatnot. And of course this side of the grapple snob, we want to check to make sure that there's no cracks in it. It takes a lot of beating throughout the day. And of course the rotator here, we want to keep a check on that to make sure that there's no metal shavings and whatnot. And then I want to glance down the side of this grapple boom dual function here and make sure that it's intact just as well as the other side and whatnot, and it appears to be pretty good. Now we do the same process for each side of the tires that we use on the other side there, and since I'm right here, I want to scan here at the base of the cylinders to make sure that there are no loose bolts and pins, and then if there's any debris up in here, I want to clean it out, which there seems to be a little bit, just a little bit. And then I want to check the ground back here for leaks as well, because sometimes we have little hydraulic fluid leaks, and sometimes there's a place in this area where it will settle at, and it will leak out this area if we have a hydraulic leak. So we want to make sure we scan the ground for leaks on the back of this skidder as well. And then as we proceed to this side, and then I want to come to this side of the articulator to make sure that it's clean and debris free on this side, as well as no loose bolts and no loose pins and whatnot. And I want to check this side for frayed hoses as well, because you get a better view on the particular side that you're on. And then of course there's a little debris here. I just want to clean it out like so, because it could cause a problem. We got a hose back up in here that you definitely want to keep a check on, because it could get pinched or something like that, and it could be losing hydraulic fluid, and the debris there could contain it, and it may not drop on the ground, so you may not see the leak on the ground because of the debris clogging the hole up there, and it won't allow the fluid to leak. So sometimes we have to stick our hands back here just to check to see if it's wet back there. And then of course on this side we want to check for nuts and bolts, and I also want to check for my PPE, make sure that my fire extinguisher is in good shape. And normally I want to take it and shake it, and just to test it to make sure that it's intact. And then of course the cleaning system, we want to make sure that it's up and running and pressurized just in case we need it, and it seemed to be in good shape, got water in it. And that's our cleaning system. Okay, now what I want to do is to check inside of this engine compartment. Normally we check inside the engine compartment to do the oil check and whatnot, and to check the breathers and whatnot to make sure that they're not clogged up. And if they need cleaning, we can do the cleaning at that time. So to get the access this here, the compartment, I'm going to have to remove this cover. So pardon my back, okay? So we're going to take this off. And as always, in mounting on the skidder, you want to use the three-point contact mount. So we've got steps there. I want to put two hands here, the foot there, hand there, and I want to climb, always keeping 3 parts of contact. Now I might have climbed up here a little too soon, but I can see my oil stick from here, and just to check it, it looks pretty good. Okay, this is a good time to check this oil is when the engine has stopped, because then its oil has been settled down. It's a little different in the way that we check the transmission fluid, which we'll come to a little later on. Okay, we want to check for frayed hoses, and the fan belt looks good on this side. And of course all of this here, the water level. And in this compartment up here, we want to check our breathers and whatnot. We want to check for the water level. And then we also want to check the radiator and the fans. We can see the fan good too once we raise this door here. The water levels look good. And this here is our reset button for the air filter. Of course, if it's green, it's good to go, but if it's red, we've got to do something to it. We want to squeeze this here for dust and dirt. There's a little dirt coming out of it, a little dust. So what I want to do is take this breather off and examine it to make sure that it's not completely defiled with a lot of dirt and dust. Okay, take this off, and it looks to be pretty dirty there. And we want to take this outer filter out. And what I could normally do is just tap it like that to see if there's a lot of dirt and dust in it. It doesn't seem to be too bad, but we have an air hose that we could blow it out. Now, if this here was really bad and terrible, we'd try to change this inner air filter here, but it doesn't seem to be too bad. So we can operate for another couple of weeks maybe. And then you want to replace this here cover on this air filter here. You have to line it up just right. There we go. And okay, you want to make sure you get these clamps in line. Pull them down. Okay. There we go. So we got that. We checked the air filter, and here I can check on top of the engine, and I can check for frayed hoses and wires, and see if anything is out of the ordinary up in here. And of course, we've got hydraulic hoses coming up. So if there's a leak, we can notice that. Now here is how we take the reading for the hydraulic fluid. And once we take it through ciphering, to build up the pressure of the hydraulic oil, we can get a better reading of that. So we'll come back and get another shot of that a little later. And as we check on top of the motor and around an exhaust for frayed wires and whatnot, we also want to check up in here for debris, dry leaves and whatnot, because that could be the highest cause for fire in here on this top of this engine. And of course, we want to check the water level and whatnot. And like Smokey says, only us can prevent forest fires. And we're out here in the forest, and I tell you, if we don't clean that debris off the top of that motor, it could cause a combustion and then burn up our machine. And we wouldn't want that. And of course, we want to close that door back, and then we want to use a 3-point contact dismount. Okay, always keeping 3 points on the machine. Okay, and now we want to turn on the main battery switch here. We'll need that on when we get ready to start the machine up in order to check for the transmission fluid. Then I want to replace my door back here. All right. Want to make sure that it's in place and whatnot. Okay. So that's going to complete this side for the walk around. Okay, now that we've finished checking inside the engine compartment for anything out of the unusual, we want to now prepare to check the transmission fluid level. And then to do that, the engine must be running, and of course it must be warmed up. So what I'm going to do now is get in here and start the engine and cipher through everything to make sure that the transmission fluid is warming up and to make sure that the hydraulic fluid's pressure is building up. Okay, and as always, as mounting this piece of equipment, we want to use a 3-point contact mount. So we want to grab these here mountain bars, put our feet on the steps, and step right on up into the cab of the vehicle. Okay. All right. Gentlemen, start your engines. Check the hydraulic fluid level. I'm going to first cipher through, and then I'm going to place the grapple in a certain position so that we can get the maximum reading for the hydraulic fluids. Then we're going to put the grapple up. It's time to check the transmission fluid reading. To check the transmission fluid, we want to look inside this compartment. And we want to check it while the engine is running. So, let me make sure I got a rag here. Okay. And as we mentioned, the transmission fluid should always be checked with the engine running at low hour, and it should be at operating lamp range. Okay, you seem to be very fine. It's at operating range, so we're good on the transmission fluid. And of course, we want to close this compartment back. Shut off the engine. Okay, we want to shut the engine off now. Okay, lock that back. All right. So now that's going to complete the walk around for right now. And now we're going to prepare to give this good baby a real good grease job. So stay tuned.